which was affordable, and then actually goes beyond that and gives us the opportunity to increase the number of homes. So why not a ballot? Because we didn't have the luxury of choice, because refurbishment was unaffordable. Equally why we wouldn't have talked about refurbishment, because having established quite clearly it wasn't affordable, it would have been wrong to ask people. And on the sort of resident-led options, they were refurbishment. And it was after the Cabinet decision in March where we'd gone through all of that, established it was very clearly unaffordable, and it would have been just cynical to have gone back and consulted on something we'd already ruled out.
Do any of you to have a follow-up on that?
Thank you. As this is obviously an ongoing issue, and we've heard from places like Westbury as well, is this something the Council will be taking into consideration? That, as I say, although it's not a legal requirement, it's something that we might consider as a Council putting into our Constitution.
Yeah, just respond to it.
Okay. No. We have a clear requirement to build, as I've set out. The need is enormous to build more homes. We have a duty to work through and see how that can be done. We have a duty to make sure that despite the very significant funding shortfall that we have from the government to be able to bring homes for existing people up to a decent standard so people don't live as they do at the moment in damp, squalid conditions, then that needs to be a central priority, and we don't have that luxury of choice. We would if the government would give us more money, perhaps. You might be able to help us with that, Councillor Nathanson.
Councillor Parr.
In view of what some residents have said about the way the survey was conducted, are there lessons that we have learned or will learn in how we go about that sort of exercise, which might change how we do things in the future?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I mean, I think certainly the response I've heard tonight don't tally with the way in which I had expected that survey to be carried out, which was to try and prioritise responses to make sure we kept. I can sort of see why someone might not want to hand the form over if they knew that way they would be able to have a completed version and take it back. But the way in which it's been reported tonight as having been carried out doesn't sound to me, from a resident perspective, to have been a good experience. Certainly the way in which it was expected to be done was to try and make sure we went through every possible way of getting a response, including eventually leaving the survey form there. But clearly it didn't work in the way it was supposed to, and there is definite learning for there in the way that we deal with independent market research companies.
Councillor Hazelden.
It was just lessons learned again, really, but also because of what we've heard already tonight and the appreciation of what you're trying to do, and looking at the qualitative aspect and not being understood similarly in representing now procurement officers approach that differently. It's quite important that lesson is strongly learned and converted into a concrete improvement. Councillor Parr would work that.
Councillor Dyer.
I think that I am quite concerned actually about this test of opinion survey and the sort of relevance then of it when so little utilisation of it has been made in terms of the decision that you're making. So I think that that's an issue. Why waste resource to conduct a survey that doesn't have any impact on decision making? That seems like quite poor processes to me. So I'm quite concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the actual nature of the survey. Some people have highlighted some of its flaws already, but there's something for me about what is the justification for so much disruption and displacement of people's lives on the estate for so little return. That's an issue for me that I don't yet deal with rigorously justified, actually. And I say that based also on my experience of the Myatt Field North regeneration process, whereby actually the displacement and the impact of something not so rigorously thought out about its impact on the existing population of the regeneration profoundly impacted the communities in a way that has not yet been properly resolved, and I'm concerned that we're going to be repeating such a process with all the other regeneration projects that we have. And I say that to say that actually working hand in hand with the communities all the way along through the process is absolutely fundamental. And that wasn't the case with Myatt's North, not just in the planning, but in terms of the implementation. So I've got real concerns about this in relation to Cressingham. I highlight, if you look on page 147, because I think some of the justification is about that a lot of the properties are in very poor condition. It says that 66% expressed dissatisfaction with their home. That sort of statement is based on the following two pieces of evidence. That 66% expressed dissatisfaction within their homes in relation to damp and disrepair. That 56% said it was difficult to keep their homes warm in winter. However, there are problems with the wording of these questions, which means that the above inference from Acuity, page 147, which the Lambeth Council report repeats in page 3, is invalid. So the question number 6 is, does your home suffer from damp or disrepair? This is what is called a double-barreled question, right? And that two quite separate and different phenomena are conflated together. Damp and disrepair, these are not equivalents. So there's no indication of how severe either the damp or disrepair might be, and that's a crucial question, a crucial omission actually, because many homes in London have some kind of disrepair and damp. It could range from a leaky tap to a broken cupboard door handle. We don't get any sort of grading of the specifics that then you're basing a fundamental regeneration decision upon. It's not. It's illogical to my mind. So it's quite a major logical leap from saying I have a leaky tap to which I'd like fixing to yes, please demolish my home. It's a bit bizarre. I'll sort of leave it there, actually.
I think there's probably enough points.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go in reverse order because it's easier to read up the page and I won't miss anything out. The fact that to bring the estate up to Lambeth Housing Standard was going to cost £9.4 million, almost 3 times the amount of money that it should have cost if it was at the same level of cost per unit as everywhere else, means that it really wasn't leaky taps. We're talking about very serious levels of disrepair. We're talking about, coming back from the building survey, the fact that there were structural issues with roofs that would need to be removed and dried out over 6 to 9 months. We're talking about very serious levels of disrepair. And if it were just leaky taps that needed tightening, we wouldn't have had to embark on this conversation back in 2012. There was the issue around disruption in terms of whether it's worth it. Yes, it's worth it because there's no other way for those tenants to have a decent home. I think tenants probably do want a decent home, actually.
Please.
So, tenants do want and do need, and frankly, having paid their rent week in, week out, do deserve a decent home. And it's why, as a council, we have a commitment to bring every home in the borough up to the Lambeth Housing Standard. But we've been very upfront since the start of that programme. Not every home will be brought up to standard through repairs, because there's a shortage of money and there are some estates where the issues are too great. And I would never seek to challenge on who knows more about Myatt North regeneration, because you have, as a former chair of the TRA, they're much more experienced than me, but I did check these figures, and albeit it was done in a different way and through a peer fine some time ago, of the 205 residents, 205 households who needed to move on Myatt North, 75% of them moved directly into a new property on the estate and just moved once. And of the remaining 47, some people chose to move elsewhere, some people have been decanted temporarily, and some of those people are now moving back. So in terms of disruption to community, on Myatt North, 3/4 of people just moved straight into a new property.
Hang on. I don't want to. I don't want to get into a row.
I'm not going to get into a row about Myatt, but it's relevant. Hello, it is relevant to this debate. it is relevant to this point. It is relevant in the sense of that actually what you're promoting, the decision that we're trying to make here is something that impacts on the indigenous community of Cressingham Gardens. This is a similar experience to what happened in Myatt North. Therefore, we must learn from the similar experience. And I'm saying that even though you've got whatever figures that you've got there, actually what's happened is that a lot of people were unable to port mortgages. I'm not exactly specific about whether that was 10 people or 20 people or 100 people, but it was enough to cause enough stress for some people now to be in temporary housing, lost their home. They're now trying to bid for housing through the homelessness system here. They're in severe ill health, yeah? And some people have left the estate, they were displaced of the estate, moving to housing beyond the communities that they were accustomed to. Older generation people who have impacted, and some people have died. These are some of the lived experiences. So I'm saying we have to take these factors into consideration, and actually there should be a more robust assessment of what are the equality impact assessments on these communities and how are you going to mitigate quite specifically in managing those. This is something that was not done with Myatt North, and in order to learn from that experience, you must be applying those lessons so that actually you're getting the good outcomes, but at the same time you're not detrimentally affecting the people on the estate.
Okay. Councillor Wilcox.
I had points around the actual survey, back to the survey, and the word trust has been used a lot this evening. And my understanding from reading the papers is that there are a whole range of ways of talking with the residents of Cressingham Gardens. So it's not just a case that this consultation was the only mechanism whereby to gain opinion. But I do, looking at it, the way in which it's, when we have the actual copy of the questionnaire, there are two sentences that jump out. One is around, if people are looking at this and thinking, how is it, this is on page 149, how is this information going to be used? What am I actually completing here? The first is, says it would be used by the Council's regeneration team, who will use it to inform the Council's decision-making process. So inform the decision-making process, not actually be a decision-making process. That's number one. And then the views collected through this survey will help the Council to assess the current views of residents. So, to my mind, there is a confusion there around what the questionnaire was designed to elicit from residents. And again, you see it even with the people who actually conducted the survey themselves, talking about how the methodology wasn't ideal, given that you were asking very open-ended questions. I think the essay-like answers was a phrase from somewhere. But the idea that the open-ended question is asked, but then in Cabinet, where figures were presented to Cabinet, it talked about how there were caveats and unsaid, but there would be. In those sort of answers, you're not going to get the yes/no answer that Councillor Park referred to. So my first question is why was that particular route gone down, and why was it not explained very, very clearly? Because I think going forward, it's all around communication and trust and trying to be able to build that trust. As you know, really, really crystal clearly about what this survey questionnaire was actually designed to do. And the other thing is, I think that there is a certain validity in the argument of this confusion between having option 1 and option 2 all of a sudden, having had discussions around, scenario 1 and scenario 2, having previously always had options 1, 2, and then continuing on 6, 7, 8. And to my mind, if I was presented with that, if I had heard tell of these resident-led options at some stage, I might not be able to recall them all on the doorstep in the middle of looking after children and doing the dinner. And so being able to draw out those points which could have been useful, which could be put towards a future scenario, wouldn't have been that easy for me. So I feel that there could have been more information for residents to help them give the views that would be useful.